Today we check out River, a time loop movie from Japan based around a hotel in a small vacation village. Along with its sense of humour and shooting style, the movie's pretty unique, in that every single character is experiencing the time loop. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
I come in peace.
This is a science fiction movie podcast. We get together and we talk about a science fiction film. It's that simple. And one of the things we want to do throughout a lot of the episodes for the rest of this year is to try and look at some interesting films that have maybe flown under the radar from this decade, so meaning 2020 until now. And maybe with a little sneaky countdown at the end of the year, some of what the best sci-fi movies have been.
They'll never see it coming, Pete. You kept it so under wraps.
Sneaky. It wasn't planned as far advanced as the 80s countdown that we're definitely doing, so it's sneakier than that. It's all relative.
True.
So
yeah, it puts me in more of a frantic position to get homework done, so thanks for that.
Oh, you're welcome. So yeah, this one's not as old. This is from last year, and I actually discovered this movie, which is called River. It's a Japanese movie, and I discovered it just purely because Arrow put it out on digital and I assume Blu-ray as well. But it popped up as new in the store. I saw the Arrow logo, and I did a quick sort of Google to see what the movie was, because I just always pay attention to what they're putting out, and it said it was a sci-fi movie. And it had like a really reasonable Rotten Tomatoes rating. And I went, all right, I'll just buy that since it's on sale, and I'll slot that into the schedule for whenever's convenient on Ace. So here we are, right? I went in completely blind. I knew it was science fiction. I had no idea what the premise was. I had no idea what subgenre of science fiction it was. I had no idea what the tone was going to be. All I knew was River, which, for the record, is a tough title to search because there's a lot of movies just called River. So you really have to specify 2023 when you're putting that in. But that said, though, because Arrow put it out, it is readily quite available to rent and whatnot and buy across your digital platforms. So, anywho, I mean, we'll start spoiler-free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we go into spoilers. We'll just remind you as well that if you are enjoying the show and you're on YouTube, do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch if you do. And, of course, you can get bonus shows from me and David every month over in Patreon, but I'll tell you more about them at the end of the show. So, the basic premise of this, which isn't a spoiler, although I almost don't want to spoil it because I didn't know what it was going in, but this is a time loop movie. But specifically, and this is there's two things that make it unique as a time loop movie. One is that every major character in the film is experiencing the loop, and that two, the loop only lasts 2 minutes.
Yes.
And those are the two things. That is the main premise of this movie. That is what defines it as being unique and different from other things. And something that I actually didn't quite catch on this viewing, I read it afterwards. Now, I noticed a lot of great cinematography. I noticed a lot of winners. But the thing I just read implied to me that every single loop is a single take.
Didn't realize that?
I don't think I noticed that. Like, I noticed that a lot of the shots were long single takes. I don't think it clicked for me that every single time it started a new loop, it just stayed in that shot until the end of the loop.
Yeah, that's what I found most impressive about the cinematography, was that every single go around, like, you followed the characters as they were walking from each location to each location, and like it stays very much on them the whole time. Yeah,
like I noticed there was a lot of long takes, but it never just quite clicked. I assumed there was some dramatic cuts here or there, but no, apparently there wasn't outside of the loops. Obviously, before the loop starts, it's a little bit different and whatnot. But you know, so from a filmmaking standpoint, this is interesting if you're into that kind of thing, and I certainly am whenever I hear little factoids like that. So that's the premise of River. So that probably has got you intrigued, and I suppose all you need from us now is to hear if it was good or not. So, David, I assume you hadn't even heard of this until I said, hey, we're watching it.
So, correct. I haven't heard of it, though apparently I did go in with a bit more knowledge than you, because
you cheated. You're a filthy little cheat who went and read a description or watched the trailer like some sort of common trash.
Whoa! First off, I went in and I read the single line IMDb thing. And that was specifically just so I could try to pick a relevant homework movie for the end of this review. But yeah, sure. I'm bottom tier trash for knowing the bare essentials of a movie going in.
Where's your sense of adventure? Where's your sense of adventure? Just go out and discover it.
I really did want to go in as like blind as possible. And to be fair, I didn't know about the 2-minute thing. I knew that it was a time loop movie, and I knew that it was Japanese, obviously, but I didn't know that it was 2 minutes. So once it started cycling over the 2 minutes, I was like, oh, this is going to be obnoxious for them. This is like, you can't get nearly as much, like, you can't get a full Groundhog Day done in this. You can't self-improve. You can barely make it down the street.
Yeah, I assumed it was going to change at some point once that started. But then after enough loops happen, I'm like, no, this is just going to be 2 minutes. Like, this is going to keep being 2 minutes, and they have to try and solve this in 2 minutes. Anyway, so yeah, the other obvious question, now that I've given you an appropriate amount of shit to start the show off with, don't worry, there'll be more later, audience.
I insist, please.
But David, how did you find River?
So going into it, the very opening of it is very like tranquil and very calm, and I was expecting kind of like a Groundhog Day sort of thing of like, you know, a moralistic sort of going into it and like finding, oh, you know, we're going to self-improve. We're going to find things about ourselves and blah, blah, blah. I did not expect this to be as comedic as it was. This was very funny throughout. It plays with this concept in a very interesting way. Overall, I definitely enjoyed it. I think that this was a very smart way to do a time loop movie in such a quirky way. I mean, I've said it before during like a Back to the Future review and stuff like that. I am a sucker for time travel movies. That is my number one favorite type of like sci-fi stuff because, as I said in that review, it's something that forces the writers to get creative with the way they tell the story. It's something that allows for things that normally can't happen in a normal narrative. And I think that this fully shows that on display. This is something where they took the concept of you only have 2 minutes and they ran with it in every single aspect they could. They fully explored the concept of it. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. Add on the incredible cinematography aspect of it where everything's just a one-take shot over and over and over again every 2 minutes. It's something that keeps you engrossed in the world because it is keeping you in line with the characters of finding out as they find out stuff. But at the same time, it's a beautiful way to demonstrate exactly how the time loop feels just visually as well. So yeah, 2 thumbs up for me. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was great. I think it's very inventive. I think sort of doing the time loop movie, which has been done to death at this point, but giving it this weird limit of 2 minutes, which is so interesting. And it probably is why all the characters remember the loop, because it would be impossible to have just the main character remember and ever advance anything. But you've got this idea that they're all remembering it, and you know the setting of the movie is this sort of little hotel or this little inn that's got like 2 buildings like across the street from each other, and there's a lot of like going back and forwards across the street. And I think these one take shots for all these 2 minute loops, I felt that by the end of this movie I knew the geography of this little area so well, and I understood kind of how long it took for one person to get from one place to the other, because they always snap back to where they started the loop. So they're always doing that. It explores all the characters and all the things they're going through and why they maybe needed the time to stop for a bit to actually consider what their life, what they were doing next in their life, and that's something that's explored. It's obviously more so with a couple of the main characters than some of the B characters, but they all get a little bit. But it is quirky, it is funny, it made me laugh multiple times. Some of the reactions are funny. It's always kind of sweet. There's 1 or 2 moments that kind of like threaten to get kind of dark, but they never get too dark, but they kind of just tease it a little bit. But for the most part, it is charming, it is quirky, it's endearing, and honestly, it looked really good. Like, it was only in HD, it wasn't like 4K. For whatever reason, this didn't get like a 4K release, but it looked really good. Everything looked nice and bright and sharp. It had a really nice, feel-good kind of vibe to it. And if I have any critiques, really, because they do it a little bit, but they don't maybe go into it as much as I would maybe have picked to, and it's fine because it's not really what the movie ends up focusing on, is kind of the more of the mechanics. They ask a few questions about some of the rules, about how this time loop's working, but they don't necessarily go into it and really explore it quite as much as maybe I could, because the movie's only 86 minutes. I could have done like another 10, 15 minutes just to fit in a few more loops where they're like, okay, let's see where the boundaries are. Let's see how it works here and this way and that way and so on.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's a minor quibble because what it's actually trying to do, it succeeds. And you're enjoying what the characters are doing as the loops progress. And some of the things that are interesting is just the time constraint of 2 minutes where they already have a plan in one loop, but then the time runs out so quickly that when they snap back to the original starting positions, it becomes this race to get back to where they were so they can continue doing whatever they were doing. And that's played with throughout. So you really get this sense of time crunch to the proceedings.
I also really like how clever the geography of it is that whenever there's a character, like occasionally they'll establish that our main character, the one who we start each loop with, has to have a conversation with somebody. They made sure to have that character in a very easily reached position.
Yes.
So that way we didn't have to continuously do like over and over again this running back to get to the conversation to begin. All they did is throw open a window and just continue where they were at.
That's what I was going to say. It's something as simple as she just says, I start down there, so just stick your head out the window and we can continue this conversation when the loop resets. But they also play, like, one of the early things that come up is the idea that okay, so the main character is like a maid or a waitress at this hotel, right? Mikoto was her name, and she's definitely the sort of the main central character we focus on. And okay, so it's happening for her, and it's very quickly established that it's happening for the manager and the manager's wife and like the staff that are also there, and they're all kind of freaking out. But there's a portion early on in this movie where the key goal for these characters is just to try and still take care of the guests, and it's a really good way of like establishing who all the main guests are that we're going to see. But also just this idea that, like, well, you know what? We take care of them through storms, and when the power goes out because of a snowstorm, time loop's nothing compared to that. So we're going to make them feel comfortable, and we're going to try to reassure them.
This is one of the few things that I think that this movie could only really work in a Japanese setting, where this idea of like, doing your job and doing like a good job at it and being subservient in that way to people who like are your customers. That's a purely Japanese thing. You put that to an American context, immediately these people are leaving their job and just saying, nope, good luck.
Yeah, the most you get here is one character says, hey, how's our pay working as this 2 minutes keeps going over? Like, are we getting paid for all this accumulative?
I think it's another time. I think it's even the same character who says, like, hey, when can we take our break? And one boss lady's just like, later. It's like, all right.
Even though emotionally they're still just as exhausted because they've been doing this 2 minutes over and over again. No, it plays with all those things really well. This is such a random, interesting little find. It's why I like those boutique labels who put these types of movies out, because it's like, oh hey, they've put this out, it may be worth looking. No, they're not always, but there's a good chance it's worth looking at when that happens. I want to talk a little bit about the director actually here, because I looked up the director. And he's got some shorts to his name. He's got a different movie. Well, I'm assuming it's a he. I'm not actually sure. Junta Yamaguchi. I'm assuming that's a he, but I'm not actually sure now that I'm thinking about it.
I will see if I can find out.
Yeah. So, interestingly, in 2020, and this might even be a movie I've got scheduled for later in the year without realizing it was the same director.
You do.
He did a movie called Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes. And I saw that title after watching this and went, wait a minute. You could have called this movie that because of the 2 minute time loop. What the hell? Is this just the same movie and he's sort of like redone it? But when I read the brief synopsis here in IMDb, it's very different.
Cheater? You cheating? You looking ahead at a movie, Pete?
No, I'm in charge. It's different when I do it. I'm in charge. You stay in your lane. Okay.
Gotcha.
Right. But
it is a he, by the way. I looked that up.
Okay, good to know. But when I looked at the description of this, it's a very different plot, right? But it does play with time, and it does play with the idea of 2 minutes. And I mean, just to give you what it is, it's basically a TV that shows 2 minutes into the future, right? And all I could think is, wait, is this director just obsessed with the idea of what you can do with 2 minutes? Because it's like a very different concept, but it's still using 2 minutes as a central time mechanic.
It strikes me the same sort of thing as like the Cornetto trilogy, where you're going to be able to thread these two movies and hopefully a third along the way.
The 2 minute trilogy.
This very general theme of 2 minutes.
The 2 minute trilogy. Oh, I can't wait for the third one if he has one in the tank. But I just thought that was very, very interesting. And I didn't even mean to schedule 2 movies from the same director, but here we are. It's naturally happened. And that one is also listed as sci-fi comedy, so I expect we have an idea of what to kind of expect
Yeah,
tonally.
it feels like it's going to be a very similar feel for it.
Yeah, but no, I like this a lot. I was very impressed. It got me. Like I was kind of, because like you said, the first like couple of minutes are kind of serene, and I'm kind of into this, and it's like drawn me into like whatever it's going to be. But then once the loop started and the quirk kind of started to come into play, I'm like, this is just kind of, it's working. It's fun cinematically. It's interesting because of all the oneers. But even on the time loop sense, it's so unique versus other time loop movies because of that 2-minute time limit.
Yeah, that's the thing. All the other time loop movies, I feel like it's the Groundhog Day thing.
It's either a day or it's until they die, right? That's typically what the time limit is.
But even then, the general vibe of it, the general feel from those is always this idea of some level of self-improvement. Whether it's, you have to keep on getting better at this task so you don't end up dying, or you have to just improve your life in Groundhog Day. So I like this because it comes at it from, no, you have 2 minutes. Like, yes, you could theoretically like watch a whole movie or read a whole book in these 2 minutes or whatever, but this movie doesn't take that route. It doesn't focus on the ideas of like self-improvement or whatnot. It purely focuses on, okay, let's figure out how to get out of this, like from the get-go. Because it is so fast-paced, there isn't any time for them to like, go to bed or do anything else. There's one character in this who started the loop in a bath, and like it takes him a good 30-45 seconds out of the loop just to get dressed and exit the bathroom, which obviously isn't ideal for him.
Yeah, but that said, there is like character progression with all these characters because they are all at these sort of junctions in their life. Like they're all here, and they all in some way feel like they're stilted in some way. So there is like good character work in there. Even aside from just all the quirky, that's how do we solve this? Do we just put up with it? Will it go away on its own? What's causing it? Is it mystical? Is it something else? And we won't spoil it obviously, but by the end of the movie, there is an answer. There is an answer for why this is happening, and
it's played up in a comedic way too. Exactly like what the answer is.
Yeah, and depending on what you're hoping for from the answer, you may be disappointed that it is such a light-hearted kind of explanation. But I gotta say, with the tone of the movie, I was into it when it happened. When it got to that point, I was like, yeah, the way you're treating this feels right, given the tone of the rest of this movie. So, yeah, good stuff.
I would say one of my only criticism with it is again, the 2 minutes, it feels like clockwork. And as such, the pacing really works for me. But there is a section in the middle of this where we delve a little bit into like a romantic comedy aspect of it. And while I like how it begins, I think it eats up just a few too many of the loops. I think it takes up just a bit too much time and ends up just kind of pattering out into nothing by the time that the movie like gets to the end. I mean, it's good character development, but pacing wise, it's the reason that they go to it, or not the reason why they go to it, but when they go to it, there's other stuff going on in the hotel that I think I would have much rather have stuck around with instead of this romantic comedy aspect. So it kind of, that's the only part where the tone felt a little bit like, okay, well, I get why this is here, but I also think that like you said, another 15 minutes or so, and I would have been fine with it.
Yeah, I'm conflicted with that complaint because I think it's kind of the heart of the movie, that relationship that it's getting at, but also because they're doing the strict, we're just following her, maybe occasionally going to other characters, but if we're going to other characters, we're doing it in camera. We're not cutting to other characters. So therefore, you have to just, who are we sticking with for this 2 minutes? Because that's who we're sticking with. We can't just go back and look at the other people and whatever they're doing. So, I think it's kind of like I appreciate it because it shows that the director and the people making the movie, they decided what their format was, what their gimmick is, for lack of a better word, even though gimmick, that implies negative. It's not negative, but it is a gimmick. But you use that to your advantage, use that to tell your story. And nothing pisses me off in a movie like this if they abandon their core rule set just because they feel like they want to at a certain point. And the fact that they never do is like it makes it work better for me because I'm like, no, you stuck to this, warts and all. Like this is our limitations, and this is what we're going to do with this movie. We've got 2 minutes per loop, and we're going to follow it this way. And I think the energy of all of it and the way, because one of the things that the oneers do as well, it's not just the idea that it all feels almost documentary like. some of it almost feels like it's into POV, because sometimes the camera will almost go in front of the character, and you'll get like a POV shot of like going upstairs or going down the street or whatever it is, and you really get this sense of like I said, that we said the geography, and that's a big part of it, but also just the sense of like the rushing through the geography, or like, you know, like after a few loops, there's a whole thing where they have to go to the building across the street, and when they do that, it feels like an epic journey, even though it's just a walk across the street and up some stairs. It feels like a big deal because we're so confined by this 2-minute time constraint, and I think having the shots be one take sells that time, like it, because there's no cheating it. It's like I'm sure if you go through with a stopwatch, I'm sure there's some that slightly stretch or bend like exactly how long it is. That's okay. I'm not complaining about that. That's artistic license. But you really feel the time every single loop because it is one continuous shot. So it's a really strong choice that, again, you could argue that it's a bit gimmicky, but man, if there's a gimmick I love in movies, it's a goddamn winner. So it works.
There was one thing that I found interesting, and obviously it's a restriction that the filmmakers could not get around because of their budget and how they wanted to film this, and that is the weather still changes. There's this thing where throughout each loop the weather is still changing, but it's one of those things where you know they easily could have just ignored it or like done their best to try to like film around it or whatnot, but instead they worked it into the rule set as well. It's not deeply defined. It's not something that we get like a great explanation for.
No, it's a very hand-wavy explanation. That said, though, it did do some kind of interesting things for the vibes, because like when it would cut to a new loop and all of a sudden there'd be snow everywhere, and it's real snow. You can tell it's real snow when they're running through it. It's not fake movie snow. Like, I don't know if I'd want to give that up just for consistency, because it does feel so beautiful and it looks so beautiful in this location. Obviously it was kind of a restraint of like, I assume, you know, they do a loop a day basically. And maybe sometimes it'd take a few days to get a perfect take of a loop even. I don't know. I guess it kind of depends. I'm sure they got really good at it though. I'm sure by the time they were doing, you know, the 15th loop of the movie, they'd get in such a good rhythm of like how to move around with the steady cam and the actors, because that's the other thing I love about a winner, is that it makes the camera almost a character in the scene, because they have to maneuver around them. They have to, like, they've got marks, and cameramen always have marks, don't get me wrong, that's always the thing with camera operators, sometimes more so than even the actors, but especially when it feels like you're dancing around the actors in this way and you're going all around them. There's a scene where they're all meeting and the camera's going around them in a circle, and it's like, well, the crew and the director are obviously hiding in another room somewhere with a monitor, because like like maybe there's like one or two people behind the camera operator moving with them. I mean, you know, the boom mic guys probably like behind the cameraman, like just sort of sneaking around, because when that camera goes around, it'll reveal anyone who's there. And this doesn't feel like a big budget movie that could CG a lot of things out. And maybe there's a little bit of that, but I don't think they were relying on that to any great extent. So they had to do it, and I think that's, you know, it makes it all feel very impressive. And I'm very happy with this. I was delighted, and it was so different. It's such a different tone from like most American movies. That it feels refreshing. I highly recommend River. It's same. It's good time. So are we in spoiler territory now? I feel like we might have to be.
Yeah, I mean, obviously one final thing just to throw in before the spoilers is there is a soundtrack to this movie, and I found it enjoyable, which is strange for me to say, because usually for me, if a soundtrack is noticeable, it either needs to be like fantastic or it's going to be annoying. But this one, I found it interesting because every time they would start a loop, if they were in the same sort of like era of the movie, the same sort of like stuff going on, whether it's dealing with the customers or making a plan or whatever else, they would use the same soundtrack, and they would start it over each time to give you this sense of like, okay, we've done this before, we've been here before. But that only made it all the more noticeable when they changed up the soundtrack. When they changed it to a different track on a different loop, you get the feeling of, okay, we're doing something different now. We're moving into a different aspect of this. So it gave that forward progression at the same time that, again, we're doing the same loop over and over again. And I thought it was really effective in that way. Yeah.
And just for the record, just in case anyone like maybe makes this assumption based on the premise, it never gets repetitive.
No.
Never once. So,
Nope.
yeah. So spoilers then from this point on for River. You have been warned. So the movie, like obviously the movie opens. Well, it actually opens on the hunter going through the snow, and I think one of the first things that I noticed was how when it cut to the other character that it cuts to, that all of a sudden there was no snow, and I think that was actually like a little hint they put in at the start that there's going to be these drastic changes. Like it was almost implying that a loop, either this comes from later on when the loops had already started,
Right.
or whatever, right? But it cuts to this woman who's at this sort of shrine that's at the top of this little village, because this is like a little getaway village, which is not that busy, but like people come here to stay because it's like by the river and there's like a shrine
it's like
area.
very traditional Japan looking. Like all the waitresses are in kimonos and stuff like that. It's very old timey.
Yeah, and they mention, this is a very quiet, peaceful area. It's away from all the big cities and all the rest of it. But we cut to this character who's at the shrine and is doing like a little prayer, and we see that people who make like little prayers at the shrine, they put up little like ribbons with messages on them and hang them on this little series of cords or whatever, and it's clearly just part of the tradition here, and I assume this is just based on other things that you might find in Japan. But I was like, okay, so this is our main character then. That was my thought when I saw her. I was like, okay, this is, and then obviously it's not. This is not our main character. In fact, you don't see her again for a reasonable amount of time. And then when you do see her again, it's one quick little thing. And then you don't see her again for a good amount of time.
Yep.
And then obviously the reveal at the end is that she's actually heavily tied to why this is all happening. She ends up being very important, but not as a protagonist.
I'll be completely honest. All of the stuff here, the hunter and then this girl at the shrine, I just blanked out of my mind until they came back up again. And then like as soon as they appeared, I was like, oh right, you were here already. We already saw you. Yeah,
they established a couple things, but of course, Mikoto is our main character, and we get a little bit of the hustle and bustle of the hotel. We see a little bit of the guests. And it does teach us a couple of things here. It establishes that one of them is a writer who's suffering from writer's block and is struggling because he's got like a serialized novel that he's doing, but he's sick of writing it. He doesn't want to write anymore, and his publisher's with him. His publisher's the guy that ends up being in the bath when the loop starts. There's two like old friends who are kind of reuniting, and they're having dinner or lunch together. So that's going to be two of our characters. And we meet this cook character who's the Taku or Teku.
Yes.
Right?
I think it's Taku, yeah.
Yeah. And he actually, he has a little moment where he runs into Mikoto, and they share a bit of a glance, which suggests that, is this a will they, won't they thing? Do they have a history? We find out later, of course. But he actually goes into one of the rooms and goes for a nap on his break. So he actually is missing for a lot of loops. We come back to him later, which is actually quite smart, because obviously once he comes back into it, it then becomes more focused on her and him as a pair.
Right.
So it's smart to keep him out of the way for the first several loops, because then we get to focus on just the time loop, and we get to focus on how does this work, what are we doing, so on and so on. But we see her as she's doing her little, whatever her next task is. She's going to fetch something from the back room. There's a back exit, and there's this little river going past, and she goes over and stands next to it. And we don't even really get what she's doing here. We find out later she's making a little prayer. She's making a wish, effectively. And this is important because later on she thinks she caused the time loop because of this little wish. That's not the case, but that's what she thinks for an extended period of this movie.
I did notice in the first 3 or 4 loops, I didn't see anything, but from 4th to 15th or so loops, I noticed that her hand was always held shut in the way that looks like she was holding something, but they never reveal what. And I'm like, oh, that's going to come back. That's going to be something. Yeah, eventually
it reveals that she is holding something in her hand, but it's very subtle how it, like you say, it's maybe a bit more obvious as it goes on and you see it over and over again. But yeah, the first few times you don't really catch that she's holding something. But yeah, so she ends up just having a chat with the manager. The manager comes in and there's I'll help you clean up this room. The guests have just left. And they're cleaning the table, and they start talking about and these were, I thought these were going to be important things that they were bringing up. They actually aren't. They're just kind of to establish that they're going to remember this conversation. But he's talking about how his daughter's got a new boyfriend, and he's feeling weird about it, and she's coming home after college or whatever. And they're just talking back and forth. And then we hear it's almost the sound effect that was in Lost whenever they went to a flashback. It was the and then it would cut, it smash cuts, and Mikoto's standing back next to the river. And she's like, and I love that this first one, it's just played where everyone's just kind of pretending that they didn't just time loop, because they think oh, no one will believe me. They'll all just think I'm crazy. So I'm just going to go through the motions and pretend that didn't happen. And then when she's like tidying the room again with her boss and like he's bringing up the same thing, he's clearly acting a bit shady, like he feels something has just happened. They're like, what was that? Did something, what's going on here? Is this some sort of
deja vu? What's going on?
Some sort of shared, like, I don't know, vision or something? What's happening here? But when it happens again, and it's almost to the exact same amount of time, obviously, it's this loop where they all start going, okay, this is a thing. We're actually time looping here. And then it slowly brings in the other character, brings in the other waitress, Chino, I think her name is, who's freaking out. She's freaking out because she's trying to heat up some sake, and just as she's about to take it out of the pot, it just or she takes it out of the pot, it goes back in, right? Yeah. And it's one of my favorite little details as we find out where all the guests are during this like initial phase is that so the two guys who were eating and waiting on their sake, they didn't even notice they were looping. They were just feeling like their bowls of rice were infinite because they just kept not running out of rice.
Well, I think that's really clever because if you, as a character, during this section aren't moving, then you wouldn't know. Yeah. You would have no idea, which is why, obviously, Taku, he's sitting there listening to something in his headphones, and we find out later that it's like a French learning tape or something like that. So the fact that they would just be repeating vocabulary words over and over again, he doesn't notice for like 20 minutes his time. He's just like, yeah, sure. I thought they were just really trying to drill into me omelette du fromage.
Yeah, no, it's just, I love how like we kind of like bring all these guests in and like side characters sort of one by one into the story. And initially it's just about dealing with them because they're freaking out and they need to know, and they try and explain it to them. And of course, the manager's saying to both Mikoto and Chino, hey, we have to try and like be calm for the guests and try and make sure they're okay. And that it means explaining to the two guys that we're in a time loop. And they bring them the sake that's not ready, and they're like, wait, this is lukewarm sake. Why is it lukewarm? It's like, oh, that's the best we can do. We don't have enough time to heat it up. Like we're going. And what convinces them that this is actually happening is that when they're talking to the waitresses and the manager, is that when the time loop resets, they all disappear from the room. So when they come back and talk to them the next time, they're like, you disappeared! What the hell's going on? And that obviously from here they start to understand. And it's around here as well where the publisher guy comes running out with just like he's like towel wrapped around him. And one of my favorite things here is just how shy the two waitresses are at this guy running around in his towel because they're like trying not to look, and everyone's kind of freaking out and like, no, sorry, you have to go back to the bathhouse. And he's frustrated because he just put shampoo in his hair and he's not getting the shampoo out before the time limit runs out.
He is literally in hell. Everyone else here, like a little purgatory, sure, but he is in hell.
I don't know. The two guys eating infinite food and not getting full sounds like a great time to me.
I mean, yeah, I'll give it that. But then there's also the thing of eventually you just want to stop eating. Eventually you want to be full. And to never have that,
well,
that's also...
I mean, you can stop basically whenever you want. As soon as the loop resets, you just put the bowl down. I mean, it's fine.
Yeah. That's the other thing I liked about this is that it's not for a little bit later here, but we do establish pretty early on that while this is a time loop and like they trust that it's going to happen again, they never fully commit to that. They're never like, okay, like commit whatever heinous acts you want because we're going to be redoing it soon. They specifically tell everybody.
We'll get to that. No, we'll get to that because that's actually it brought up a specific scene which we'll talk about. So we'll save it for there. But we also get introduced to the writer character who's frustrated because he's writing stuff and then it's disappearing. Which, given that he's struggling to even try and write in the first place, is really upsetting him. So they have to explain to him, oh, we're in a time loop. And again, it takes 2 loops because they have to run back up to his room. They're like, oh, this is the furthest away room. This is a nightmare. So they run back up again and he finally believes it. And then he's like, but wait a minute, this means my deadline is no longer a deadline because we keep time looping. I don't have to finish this stupid thing. Oh, take your time. I don't need this to be fixed. You just do what you want. I'm just going to lean back and relax for the first time in months.
I was gonna, they're all very happy for him. They're just like, yeah, great, cool. And hey, maybe you could like pre-plan the novel in your head and write it down later. He's like, nah, screw that. I'm gonna relax.
I will be doing no such thing. Thank you very much. So no, I did a good job of establishing all this. And one of my favorite things is how it feels like they all start working together at a certain point. Because after like the first time the publisher comes running out the bathhouse and they have to kind of like push him back into like the entrance to the bath area. And like he's not really happy about it, and he's asking to get like the extension number to phone his writer in the other room. When we look back again, and Mikito's outside at the river again, the two friends who were eating, just stick their head out the window and say, "Don't worry, we'll catch the publisher guy." Right. And I really like that mechanically, because it's like, oh yeah, they're all experiencing this, and because they're closer to where he's going to pop out, they'll just handle it first. Which, admittedly, the publisher guy at a certain point should just know to not leave the bath area, but you know, he's determined.
I do like how at a certain point, we never see it, but at a certain point they come to some sort of like probably routine for them where someone gets him a robe so that he doesn't have to leave in that, and they just do that at the beginning of each loop, so he's able to wear a robe around for the rest of the time.
Yeah, and then the big sort of like, and this led to one of my favorite lines of dialogue in the whole movie. And I know it's like a translation thing, because you would never write this line in English like this for American or English speaking audiences. Is eventually I think there's a quick bit earlier on in one of the loops where they shout over to the other building, and like the cooks are like, "Hey, yeah, this is happening over here too." But that's kind of it for a little bit. But eventually, like, hey, next loop, come over here, because we think we have a meeting, because we've got some ideas. So next loop, they run over, and we mentioned this earlier, the camera goes along the street and like up the other side and the stairs and all that. And they go up to this room in the second floor, and like, God, why is it on the second floor of the building across the street? You couldn't we have picked neutral ground in the middle of the street or something, so that we all had to just go less distance, whatever. And my favorite line of the whole movie is the assistant cook says, that Calm and I will try to explain it, because I'm a like a, what was the word? I'm a
science major.
I'm a science major. But it was the way he said it. He said, "Me, a science major." It was that comma and then like the what he was. That's just like, oh, that's like a bad line of dialogue. Like if that was in English written that way, that's like a Tommy Wiseau line. But because obviously it's just a translation from Japanese, it's like, okay, I'm sure it sounds fine in Japanese. It's just like whoever translated this has written it kind of weird, or that way around's fine in Japan, whatever.
Yeah.
But I just love that. It's like, this is the best we've got, is that one of our cooks happens to be majoring in university doing like theoretical like physics or something, and because of that, he's the only one equipped to maybe try and make some sense of this.
I also love that, him, the science major, he obviously knows what's going on, but then there's the other cook going on who is obviously the most dense person here. And so as he's trying to explain, throughout these 15 loops or whatever so far, no one ever explained to this dense guy like what's going on. He's just been rolling with it. So he's like, "Wait a minute, what do you mean? What do you mean time loop? What's going on?" And everyone's like, "Bro, we just had to run up 3 flights of stairs. Shut up and we'll explain it later." Yeah,
they all get pissed at him because he wastes too much of the time, and they realize the loop's about to end, and like, shit, we have to come back here next time, and they all just go, "Oh, you asshole!" Right? Yeah. So when they run back over for the next loop, they immediately say to him, "Ask him all your personal questions later," right? We've got important things to talk about. But between these two loops, though, this, science major like establishes a couple of things, which is good to hear as an audience member, but he kind of solidifies a few things. It's a 2-minute time loop. It's this time to this time. It's like, it's not even like on the minute. It's like 40 seconds into a minute, then 2 minutes. And he's like, okay, so this is what's happening. We don't know what's causing it. But in the previous loops, we've went around and asked, and there is a barrier, because he puts on the map, he's like, here, it's affecting everyone in this radius, but for whatever reason, it's not affecting people outside that. They have no idea of there being a time loop. And
like when you say that, they are still looping, they're just not conscious that they're looping.
Yeah,
They run out there and they talk to them.
Yeah, time on Earth isn't moving forward as a whole. They're just, they're not conscious of there being a loop. To them, it's just the 2 minutes are just happening as normal, and they'll never know there was a loop.
Right.
Yeah. So they establish that, and they establish, okay, we have to figure out what's causing this. We have to figure out what's going on. I'm going to try and find out what the source of this is. I'm going to look around and see if I can figure out anything. So they just kind of like get some of the ground rules out of the way. But I like it because it feels like problem solving. And like, I love how it's not even just the employees who run over. A lot of the guest characters run over too. Like the two guys run over with them because they want to know what's going on. And we get, all this stuff. So
I like the publisher also tries to run over, but they lock the door on him.
yeah.
Just keep him outside because he's just being such a nuisance to them.
Yeah, it's cold outside at this point as well because they establish it as winter.
They keep on throwing out at the very beginning. It's like, oh, it's cold, it's going to snow. And this is, while they're doing this run over, the first time they run over, there's no snow. It's not snowing at all. And then the next time you see it start to come down.
Yeah.
And that's one of those times where they throw out the little line saying like, oh yeah, the world line is still shifting. Like something is still changing, but it's very hand wavy where they don't want to say like, okay, it's not a perfect loop, but just trust that the weather is going to keep moving.
Yeah, it is just hand wavy to explain why the weather keeps changing. But like I said, though, I kind of like the different vibes that like when I noticed it started snowing, I got excited. I was like, oh, like things like the weather changing is kind of interesting. So if nothing else, it made for some really nice visuals throughout the movie. So no complaints for me on that front. But
one line I want to throw out just from the dense chef, because it's what wraps up the final loop as they're explaining the situation. He leans over to the head like hostess lady and he's like, if I take a crap, will it go back up into my ass afterwards? And she's like, yes it will.
Yeah. Someone also asked, not in this scene, but someone like says, what happens if one of us dies? Do we come back when the loop starts? And they never test that, obviously. I mean, it does get tested by someone else later,
yes,
intentional or otherwise, but this was also the scene that would they kind of bring up the thing you were getting at, is that just before they depart on the end of this sort of second loop of the explanations, the student character, he's like, hey, what's important here is to not like lose who we are, because we all remember like everything as we're looping through this, so it'd be very easy if you get upset or if you like start to break, you're still going to be breaking when we reloop. You're not going to reset. So we have to all sort of stay kind of sane and like conscious of what we're doing, and also don't like do anything out of character. But just because you never know if this is the last time we're going to loop. For all you know, this is the one that might stay. So don't do anything horrible. And I think because they all are going to remember it, like they're all in a sense keeping each other in check. Because even if one of them does like say, I'm just going to kill everyone this loop just for the fun of it because it won't stick. All those people are going to remember that they did that the next time and probably not going to take too kindly to it. So, you know, there's some like natural reasons to keep them in check. The one thing that kind of goes into that territory is the writer character who starts just kind of like wrecking the room and like throwing the laptop out.
Yeah.
And they kind of like play with the idea where he's like, hey, Mikito, like, go on. You ruined part of the wall. Go on. Poke your fingers through it.
There's one of like the rice paper windows and he's just like, go ahead. You've always wanted to. It's like bubble wrap. Just stick your finger through it.
And she goes to do it, and she's almost like, and you know it's going to loop is like when she's like a second away from it, and of course it does. She loops back down at the bottom. But that was like one of the few moments where it's like, okay, it's playing with the idea of like, you know, will some of them maybe try and get away with things they wouldn't otherwise normally do.
Well, that's the other thing going on is obviously the publisher is getting more and more angry at being held back from talking to the writers, so he's pushing his way through more. He's getting more frustrated with that. But then also the two friends that were catching up with each other, apparently they get into some sort of argument and it's very loud. It's very confrontational between them. And the hotel staff is basically just trying to keep everybody calm this whole time. And I don't know what happened because they only show it on one loop, but they show one of the chefs come over covered in blood saying that like the other chef just went crazy and let all of his aggression out and stabbed another chef, and it's like, what the hell happened over there?
It's kind of treated as dark humor as well. It's not really treated as if it's like something we should be scared of, but even though they could have totally went in that direction if they wanted to, but and then it's probably around here where the like Taku wakes up and sticks his head out and is like, hey, what's going on? And
I heard people yelling. What's happening?
Mikoto like sort of like comes in and says, hey, time's looping. What's going on here? And he's like, yeah, I've been listening to my thing, but I've been listening to the same track for what feels like 20 minutes. What's going on? Something weird's happening. Because I think they say, because this is after, of course, all the meeting to like discuss what's going on with the other characters. They said during that one that was the 12th loop, I believe, just to give you a bit of a benchmark.
Yeah, I didn't go through and count them. I was tempted to, but I wanted to enjoy the movie. But just based off run times, it seems to be about 35 to 40 loops. Okay. It's somewhere in there because between the first loop and last loop, there's 70 minutes. So if each one's 2 minutes, it's going to be about 35 loops.
Yeah, that's the reason.
Yeah.
Because they never do a montage or anything like that. Like, it'd be so easy to do like a montage to suggest, oh, there's 50 other loops in the middle that we're going to just skim through quickly. They never chicken out and do that. They just, no, we're going to commit to the bit. We're going to commit to these 2-minute sections and never give up.
But the Taku bit is like dead center in the middle. Like, we've established all the rules from this point forward. We're not getting anything new. So we're establishing now, okay, the relationship between those two. Let's start exploring that. Yeah,
and obviously there's some other things with the characters that come out as well. Also, I'll mention in here as well that the woman from the start, because it's somewhere in the middle, she has like an appearance where she comes down and says her car's broke down, and she also refers to being stuck in the time loop. And the manager does offer her some kind of help. I can't even remember what he said, but something to maybe...
Yeah, she comes down and she says, she's trying to like remain vague. She's just saying like, oh, my car engine is frozen or something like that. Like, she's not saying that she's stuck in a time loop. But then as she's walking away, the other character's like, wait, are you stuck in the loop too? She's like, yes. Oh God, I am. What are we doing? And it's like, we're working on it.
It's such a tease though, because the movie started on her, so we know she's important in some way. But like, so this was just like a little reminder that she's there. It's like, okay, we'll see when we get back to that. But like you say, this is where the relationship stuff really starts to come in, and we find out that our two main characters here, Taku and Mikoto, are already in a relationship, and there's actually some tension because he is like wanting to go to France to study French cuisine. He wants to master the art of French cooking. And there's actually a really funny line, not in the first time they have this, it's after they look, because he's standing at the ledge and he's talking down to her from the window, but where she's like, oh, how long will this trip take? Because she's obviously upset that he's leaving, and that's like something that she's upset about, and that's why she made the wish. She basically wished that the river would stop flowing, and that she thinks that caused the time loop. He says, oh, it'll probably take about 10 years to master French cooking. I'm like, given that you're already a trained chef, I feel like 10 years sounds a bit extreme, but all right, sure.
I've been watching The Bear. Seems pretty accurate.
10 years. And I'm like, you're not even going to offer her to come with you? Because you could make that offer. Like, that's something you could suggest. But, so they're doing their back and forth, and it kind of, like, progresses in a few different ways where, like, she realizes that she made this wish and kind of admits to him that she thinks she might have caused this. And as she's explaining this, the other waitress, Chino, ends up standing there at the end, and the implication is that she heard this, and then the loop resets, and immediately she has to run after the other waitress to try and catch her and like corner her and be like, hey, don't tell anyone, it's just, we don't know for sure, it's just a theory, keep it to yourself. And then she goes running and tells the manager, and everyone ends up hearing it very quickly, because like everyone just kind of congregates in the middle of the building, and they're all like, wait, what? It's her? And like, can you fix it? And they kind of just, they're very understanding that it was a wish that wasn't intentional, but they're like, okay, well, you're going to wish for it to stop then, right? Like, you got to go and fix it now.
I mean, you say that, but at the same time, when they're all ganging up on her in that first time, a lot of like the words being thrown around are like witchcraft and like cast a spell and stuff like that. So some characters are definitely noting like, okay, we get it. It was unintentional. No big deal. Other characters are like, she's dark magic user. Well, get her.
See, I think tonally there you're a little off, because to me the tone always felt like, oh, so it was like a magic spell. She's like some sort of sorceress or something. Like it always felt lighthearted. It never felt like it was turning dark. It never felt like, oh, we're about to turn it into Salem witch trials here. It never felt like that.
It never felt like that tonally, but based off of what was going on, like the next few loops after this is her and Taku just trying to hide and run away from them as well. And there's this implication of what's going to happen when they actually get her,
You say that,
it doesn't feel like it's harmful. It doesn't feel like we're about to make a dark turn. It's always lighthearted, but there is that implication there of what is the end goal for them.
Well, the end goal is just to make her try and reverse it, like that. But the tone is never that of actual threat. It's always playful. It's always they're running and hiding just to get away from them, because he said, oh, let's go on some kind of date, or maybe she makes that suggestion. But they basically, we get like 3 loops where they go in different directions and try and like hide and just spend a bit of time together. And he even makes a suggestion, oh, let's watch a movie on his phone. And she's like, but we can only watch 2 minutes. And he's like, yeah, but we can just pick off where we left off. We'll just go to that timestamp. And she's like, oh, okay. So it's like, wait, are you going to start watching a movie now?
Can you imagine if they loaded up the movie and there was a 30-second ad in front of everyone? 1 minute to get there, 30-second ad, 30 minutes of video, repeat forever.
Hopefully he is paying for whatever service that he's using, and therefore there's no ads.
Let's watch a video on Freevee. Oh no.
Yeah, because the one is just like they run down one side of the river and they go and sit, and then eventually someone spots them and they get a bit of a chase. The second time, because the other characters are aware that they're trying to get away, it's like instantly a chase. It's like, oh, let's go the other direction. And they eventually get caught up that side. And then it's like, oh, can we get to the street and maybe steal a car? And it's like, okay, let's try and do it. And we do. We get this whole sequence where they get to the street and they steal the car.
I love on loop after the car thing. They're like, okay, what's next? And she's like, do we take a hostage next loop? What are we doing? Like, she's all in.
But that's the thing, though. Like, it's always playful because when she makes that jokey suggestion, she's smiling because they're having fun. They're on an adventure. They're doing things together. And she's enjoying this camaraderie that's kind of coming from it. It feels like it's like ignited something in their relationship that was maybe, because that's the whole thing. Part of like his desire to go away, you'd assume, is that he wants to explore new things. He wants to do something adventurous with his life, and he doesn't want to just stay in this quiet little town in like sort of middle of nowhere Japan that he feels like he's stuck in.
Yep. So then the final time that they go on like a little adventure, they actually end up crossing the river. And they go up into Snowy Bank, and we get reintroduced to the hunter character for the first time since the beginning. And he's like, hey, I just saw you guys crossing the river. Well, what's going on? I've been calling my friends over my radio, and like it's been going like they think I'm nuts. What's happening? And they just make the joke of like, oh yeah, we're evil spirits and we're the one who caused it. Yeah. And then they just run off. But then that causes the darkest loop out of the whole movie.
Yeah, because on the next loop, they hear a gunshot, and you know, someone goes and checks. But it's off camera because we don't go with follow that character. But like, no, the hunter killed himself, right? And I actually love that because at this point, like all the characters are together again, and someone says, "Hey, like the manager, you've got his number, right? Can you call him the second this next loop starts and tell him why this is happening and not to kill himself?" And yeah, like they could have, like if they actually had a suicidal character who kept trying to kill themselves, you could have like had like a really interesting story there where fate had stepped in to stop them from succeeding.
Right.
And like they had this infinite 2 minutes to try and talk. Like, I can almost see a more sort of like cerebral, dark sci-fi version of this movie where it's more about like this 2 minute loop's going to be used to save someone's life, but it's going to take all these loops to convince them, and a kind of almost like a more cerebral It's a Wonderful Life kind of thing where they're like, they've got 2 minutes over and over again to like talk this person into wanting to live, and eventually they'll succeed, but like they have to like, I can almost say, and I'm not complaining that that's not what we got, I'm just that's made me think of that because it is a little dark for just a second. There's a little someone committed suicide.
The same thing that happens on the same loop as the gunshot goes off is the writer on the third floor jumps out his window and dies on the pavement down beneath.
Yeah, and because this is the one character, again, from trashing the room earlier and throwing out the laptop and stuff like that. He's the one who's kind of testing this, like, I want to do stuff just because I know it won't matter. And ultimately, this suicide, well, technically a suicide, he does it knowing that he's going to, or at least assuming he's going to come back. And he says he did it because he's really struggling with writing this about this character who died, and he wants to experience death for himself so he can speak about it from experience.
But again, tonally, it's played just off the cuff because the very next loop starts and immediately the girl runs down, the Mikoto runs underneath his window, which is like, don't do it, don't jump, you have so much to live for. And the writer's like, did you have to deal with that? Sorry. I thought maybe it would just like automatically loop. I don't worry, I'm not suicidal. Just wanted to see what it was like.
Yeah.
And like the other people grab him from upstairs. He's like, nah, it's cool, guys, I'm good.
Yeah, and I think the publisher even like hugs him and is like crying his eyes out and be like, So all of this, like, despite like how dark some of these things could be if the tone was very different or the focus was different, it's very much always keeps in line that you're never too taken out of what the movie feels like, and that's good. And I appreciate that. While at this point when they were doing all these like runaway bits with the two lead characters, this was the moment where I thought, oh, it would be kind of nice if we were exploring some of the more extended, like, hard rules of this. Like, that was the moment where I had that thought, but I still felt very entertained because the movie does a good job of evolving and doing new things with its loops. You know, we spend the first, like, third of the loops establishing what the loop is and how the characters, like, all deal with finding out about it, and then sort of, okay, what are some of the rules? And then we switch over to the more character-based thing, which is these romantic moments, and them using these 2 minutes to go on a little adventure. And let's face it, the almost slapstick style comedy of all the other characters try to find them and chase after them because they want her to fix it, because they think it's her fault, because she thinks it's her fault. Of course it isn't, and when she tries to, like, do it, and they all stand around her, like, okay, go on, make your wish, and she stands there, and it's about here where we find out she's got the blue ribbon with the writing on it, just like the woman at the start had, but that she put up on the shrine. And she like does the wish and like, oh well, that's that done then. We're fine. It's all
like,
good.
shouldn't there have been a flash? Should anything have happened? No. All right. Well, they like clap politely for her and then just walk away.
Yeah, they give her a little round of applause, and then obviously it loops again, and they're like, oh shit.
Which this is the time that I thought tonally the movie was going to shift, because it's when everyone claps and all that, it's very warm colored. I mean, there's still snow on the ground, but the coloring is very warm. There's this nice musical track playing. Everyone's happy for her. And then sometimes it just does a snap cut or like a little blur effect and then goes into the next loop. But other times it completely fades to black and goes like totally out and then comes back. Yeah. This is one of the times where it totally fades to black. And when it comes back, the color grading is a lot cooler. It's a lot more like frantically paced as other people come out. They're like, what are you doing? Are we still here?
I think part of it wanted to like maybe trick the audience into thinking it was going to go to credits, even though it would have been too soon. If you actually look at the runtime, it's only about an hour in, maybe even a little less. It would have been too soon. But if you're not really thinking about it, you're not paying attention to it, you're like, oh, is that really the end of the movie? No, we're back. The loop started again. Yeah.
And this is where other characters come in and they're just like, okay, it might have been me, because I'm also going through stuff, maybe I'm the one who caused it. This
is where they all reveal they're all stalling in something, in some way. They've all got something that they're hoping to avoid. One of the two friends, like, his business is like in desperate straits, and like he needs money, and he's trying to put that off. The writer, obviously, we've known about his things since the start. In fact, it's worth mentioning.
The guy, his daughter, and the boyfriend.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning with Mikoto is that, I don't think we quite said this, but the reason why the whole running away together kind of started is because she didn't want to fix it. She actually liked the idea that she was keeping him here. She admitted to that. And he, despite the fact that he doesn't want to be stuck in the loop, like, basically goes with her to, like, protect her from everyone else coming after her. It's kind of, it does show that he does care about her. There's kind of a, it builds that up a little bit.
Yeah, and honestly, somewhere during this part is where Mikoto basically tells him, like, look, you gotta go. We all know that, like, this isn't gonna last forever, and it's good that you go out and you do your thing and come back a better person, sort of stuff. But you are coming back. Like, let's not mince words here. You're coming back here.
Yeah, she makes that clear.
Yeah.
Like, all that stuff's super engaging, and obviously they're still trying to figure out what's causing it, right? Well, they're all starting to believe it's them themselves. They all start thinking it's each one of them individually, and eventually the student from across the street, the other cook, comes right in.
Science major.
He's a science major, of course, as he mentioned. Comes right in and says, I think I've figured it out. I know what it is.
It's none of you. All of you are stupid for thinking that. It's a scientific explanation.
And to be fair, I actually like that it turned out to be scientific, not just because I'm a science fiction person who prefers that rather than something mystical, although in the context of this movie, it wouldn't have mattered to me if it was mystical.
Right.
It's because at the start of the movie, they established that there was a perimeter, which suggests that there is a technical reason for that. It's not just a magic bubble. There's a reason why it's there must be a center that it's emanating from that's causing it. And this is where we find out that the woman from the start of the movie, she's, okay, what was the phrase he used? She's a time
patrol.
Time patrol, right? A time cop. Patrol. Like Jean-Claude Van Damme in the hit movie Time Cop.
Right? She's in the Japanese division of time cops.
Right. And when they go up the hill to where the shrine is, and it's a lot of stairs up, so they have to climb this big flight of outdoor stairs to get to this area, we see that her quote-unquote car is actually this sort of just dome-looking thing. It's a time machine. And I'm like, oh shit, there's a time traveler in this movie. This is awesome. And the reason why the time loop is happening, and it's tied to her, is that it's because her engine broke down. It's overheating. Or no, cooling down, sorry.
it's frozen.
It's frozen, yeah.
And because of whatever sort of stuff going on, it's just as a safety precaution, re-looping the last 2 minutes over and over again.
The warp drive is malfunctioning, and it's doing this out of like safety. And she's known why this is. And the last like few loops of the movie are basically all these characters saying, "Oh, how can we help fix this? Because if we fix this, then it fixes the time loop. So how do we help her?" And it's like, okay, so we need to heat up the engine. So okay, we can bring up a blowtorch. We can do this. We can do that. And it's like, oh, it also needs a bit of a kick. What if it gets shot? The hunter. Yeah. And they're like, but can the hunter get here in time? It's like, oh, it's going to be like, we're going to have to like use a loop to like prep for it, so he knows to start bolting it here as soon as the loop starts. So we get this whole race to get up this hill of stairs, and they're all like climbing up with their various contraptions to try and help this. And it's very simple, you know. They, like I say, they heat it up, like the guy shoots it, and then it kicks into gear, and that's pretty much it. But what's important though.
There is one interstitial one where I found it such a cute little character moment where she just is talking to Taku one last time here of like no consequence or whatever, and she takes one of her braids that she's had this whole time and she just cuts it off.
Oh yeah.
And she's like, yeah, you know, I've always wanted a breakup haircut, but I never actually wanted to go through with it. So that's what this is. You're going away, I'm cutting my hair. Yeah,
but then another character walks into shot and goes, "Oh, don't do that. That doesn't suit you."
Yeah, exactly. She's like, all right, well, hope it gets undone again. And of course it does.
I think that's the movie's like subtle way there of saying, hey, this isn't really a breakup. They're going to be okay. And then this next part kind of implies that as well, because it seems, you know, when what was the name? Mikoto's got like she holds up the blue ribbon, right, with the little writing on it, which is like her prayer, like
for love
or whatever. This time traveler lady, which by the way, in this scene, I noticed her shoes that actually did look kind of futuristic. Like, because she's got like a poncho thing on most of the movie, so you don't really see a lot of what she's wearing. But there is actually these little futuristic touches to like her boots and stuff.
I didn't even see her shoes. I'll see if I can track that down.
But she holds up what looks like the same blue ribbon. And it's like, oh, are they implying this is her daughter from the future? And presumably also Taku's daughter? That's what I was thinking. And she sort of, you know, waves goodbye. I love how she gets in the little time machine and actually opens the little window and just gives like a last little wave to everyone. It's all very pleasant. It's all just very lighthearted.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Her one thing is like, oh well, why were you? What were you praying for at the shrine? Why did you spend time here? And she was like, oh, I got a boyfriend. He lives up on the moon, and it's a long distance relationship. And they're like, oh Jesus, all right, yeah, cool, moon travel. That's a thing.
Yeah, and obviously, that ties into like her going, well, if she's got a boyfriend on the moon, then France isn't that far, relatively speaking. And so the end of the movie is them together as a pair standing in front of the shrine, and she, and this also made me laugh because it's a very adorable thing. It's like, by the way, you're going to master that French cuisine in no more than 3 years. Understood?
Yeah. That's my wish. That's what's going to happen here.
And he's like, I mean, all right, I'll give it a try. I don't know if that's going to work, but I'll do what I can. But I think all of this was to imply that, yeah, they need room to grow and whatnot. But I think the implication was that this time traveler was their daughter, and that she was back in this time period because this is where her parents fell in love, and she was making a wish at this same shrine because this is where, all this stuff
She also specifically says that in her future, this hotel is like super busy all the time.
Yes.
So coming back here where it's more open and peaceful and such is another reason why she's back during this era.
Yeah, I think part of the implication of that even is that this guy, Taku, coming back with like all these extra cooking skills is like part of the reason why it becomes such a popular destination, is because there's a lot of good French cuisine, maybe.
Yeah, entirely possible.
So yeah, like, this is the thing. It doesn't take. It's not a hard sci-fi movie, right?
Nah.
But it does take its gimmicks seriously and like uses them to like create an entertaining, well-paced story where the characters do like solve things. But the fun here is the filmmaking. The fun is all these one-take shots as we really get a sense of the characters and the location, and them dealing with this really specific acute problem, which is that they've only got 2 minutes. That is the movie's main hook, right? Against all other time loop movies, is that they've only got 2 minutes, but all of the characters are going through the time loop. They all remember, and they're all... I almost wanted, like... Because one of the things I was thinking about is, like, what happens if one of them goes out of the perimeter? Do they stay out of the loop now, or do they snap back inside where the loop area is?
If I had to guess, I would say they snap back in because the whole world gets reset.
Yeah.
So it would make sense that they would also just go back to their starting position as well. But yeah, there was also one part in here when they were trying to figure out, like, is this just us or is this the world? And their default was check Twitter, because people, once they started looping, they would immediately start tweeting saying, like, what the hell is going on? And they didn't find anything. There was nothing there. So they were like, all right, guess it's just us then.
Yeah, yeah. It's this is a sort of movie that I love finding from other countries, because the tone here is so unique that I just, like, I'm not saying there's no American directors or British directors that could pull off this movie, but this is a very Asian tone. I feel like Japan and South Korea specifically are both very good at doing these quirkier comedic takes on, like, sci-fi or even horror concepts that just work in this way that I can't imagine, a Universal or Paramount Pictures version doing.
I honestly think that's the other half of it, is that this does have that sort of indie feel to it as well. It doesn't feel like there was a massive production budget behind it. And I don't know what Japan's distribution system looks like. I don't know how easy it is to get distribution as an indie filmmaker, but like you said, with how quirky this was, I can't imagine it going in front of any major American studio without the studio coming back with, like, okay, but what if instead Chris Pratt voiced a magical creature that's time looping instead? It's like, all right, studios, whatever.
Yeah. And the performances are very endearing throughout. Like, everyone's pretty likable. I don't think there's anyone who isn't at least a little bit likable.
Yeah, no, and that's by design. I think this movie would have been far worse if there was actually, like, an antagonistic force. Like, if there was a character who was just purposely causing trouble for everybody. Because that's not what the movie's about in the end.
No,
The movie's about them all overcoming this.
Yeah, the time loop's the antagonist. And while most movies do need some kind of antagonist, in this movie, it doesn't need it. It's a very unique concept in that it doesn't need the antagonist. Because, I mean, Groundhog Day, to go back to the granddaddy of the time loop movies, that doesn't really have an antagonist per se either.
No.
Edge of Tomorrow does, Happy Death Day does, but they're different takes on the formula.
Yeah, but even with Groundhog Day, I think that really comes down to the time loop continuing to the point of desperation and depression. It's continuing to the point of, like that character said, you go mad. You eventually lose yourself. And this is such a I mean, literally for the characters, because we saw every loop, we know that beginning to end, it barely takes over an hour of their lives stuck in this time loop. It's not all that much in terms of being stuck there. I'm sure it seems menacing, not knowing if you'll ever escape, but all in all, it's much more lighthearted because we don't have to spend as long as any of those other loops do.
That's a good point.
Learning every detail.
Actually, it's because of the structure of the movie, barring the opening and ending, where when we're outside of the time loops, the movie effectively takes place in real time. There's no skips. Obviously, it cuts when the time loop resets, but that's happening in universe, so it's in real time effectively. You could almost have Jack Bauer at the start being like, the following takes place in real time.
But just the beep, beep, beep,
and the time loop period is it's just over an hour, right? You said 70 minutes, so like it's almost like, between the hours of 5 p.m. Well, technically it's not. It's between the minutes of 56 minutes and 58 minutes over and over again. The events occur in real time.
Across these 2 minutes, this just keeps on happening. I kind of want to, I've got the movie still rented. I kind of want to pull up the movie and just go up to, like, watch it from the beginning up to where the first loop happens and then skip to the last loop. Because that's what actually, like, in the context of the universe, actually happened. So I want to see, like, what all transpired in order there. That
said, though, that's not as relevant for this movie as other time loop movies, because with this movie, all the characters experienced it. Usually in the other movies, when you get to that last day where it actually sticks and they keep going forward, for everyone else other than the main character, that is just the events that happen. But here, it all happened to all of them, so they all know about it. Whereas it is interesting to think about, because you usually think about it from the perspective of the other characters, especially when there's someone that they're close to in the time loop that they keep trying to win over and they eventually succeed. Like, in that last loop, do they do that correctly? Do they actually, like, make amends, or they make them fall in love or whatever it may be. So yeah, there's a lot to do with the time loop, and honestly, there's an episode of the new Twilight Zone, the one that only got 2 seasons, that was narrated by Jordan Peele. That version of Twilight Zone is absolute garbage, pretty much. But there's one good episode in season 2, which I don't want to say what it is, because it's kind of a surprise that it's a time loop episode. But it's got a unique take on it, which I really liked, which again was different from all the other time loop movies I've seen. So
I like how you say Twilight Zone New Edition is garbage, but I won't tell you which episode you have to watch to get the good episode.
Yes. I'm sorry, you're going to have to... I mean, if you really want to know, I'll tell you. Just ask me. But it was a surprise in the episode, technically, that's what was going on. So, no. I had a great time with this. It was super endearing. The energy was nice and high. It was such an easy watch. Like when I go looking for gems, and I did some digging to like pan out some of like our episodes for the back half of this year, and I just found like sci-fi list recommendations, gems that maybe haven't popped up, and I got as many of them as I could, and I just threw them out of the schedule, knowing very little about a lot of them. If half of them are even close to this quality, I'll be very happy with these picks by the end of the year.
Absolutely.
So, no, interesting little find. I'm happy with it. David, would you like to rate River?
Oh God, would I? I mean, it's super up there. I would consider, again, I'm going into it a little bit biased in that I just love time travel movies, whether it's time loops, time travel, all that sort of stuff. That's an immediate like +2 points for me, just because I love the concept. As long as you do it well. If you're using it lazily, if you're using it by just saying like, oh yeah, we're in the future now, and then that's it. Like, no, do something interesting. But this movie is by definition one of the most interesting ways to deal with time loop, because it's just something that's so fresh, so unique. I'm super pumped when we do eventually get to Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes, because it feels like this director's got a really good grasp on how to handle this sort of stuff and the sort of fallout that would come out of just a normal person dealing with it. Add on top of that, the wonders going on throughout each of the time loops. It gives a great sense of geography, gives a great sense of like time passing, the franticness of how fast these 2 minutes pass by. It's just top tiers across the board. So I think overall, I think I'm going to give this one a 9. I really, really enjoyed this one, to the point where, I mean, like, my girlfriend is not interested in any sort of foreign films at all, but I kind of want to just force her into this. I want to be like, hey, we're going to get you some civilization.
Just explain to her that you're common trash and that you don't want her to be also common trash. And the way she can do that is by watching some foreign films.
Yep. I'll say the great and mighty Pete suggested that this is a good movie, and we must honor his wishes.
That is my title, and you should honor my wishes. Absolutely. I agree with those statements. I'm actually going to go as high as that. For me, I'm going to go with a very, very happy, solid 8 out of 10. I think it's a great movie. It's something that might even go up if I rewatch it, because I feel like it might even benefit from like a rewatch and the sort of like seeing how they play with it from the context of knowing where it's going. Maybe there's even some hints in there that I didn't see the first time, kind of thing. But yeah, just super pleased with it. Great. Yeah, 8 out of 10. So yeah, good stuff. It feels nice to have just discovered something kind of random that I didn't really know anything about, and I hope some people check it out because we have given it some praise. Yep. So very nice. So believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, obviously David's got his homework. He'll get to that at the end of the show here. But I've just got a couple of things to get to first, though. Next week, there's actually no episode. Believe it. See, do you know, back when we first set up our schedule for like all of this year, the plan was to have a week off every single month, and this is the first week off since December, and it is the middle of July by the time you get this episode.
I remember there was supposed to be one like a few weeks back, but then you were like, oh, but Atlas is coming out. We gotta do Atlas.
Right. So the design is to have some weeks off to make sure we can stay ahead of schedule. So there will be the odd gap. I don't think it'll be as frequent as we initially envisioned, though. I think, honestly, you're looking more like a gap after maybe every 6 episodes, something like that, which will be similar to Collector's Cut. Because Collector's Cut will take a gap between seasons. Ace will just have a gap every so often to just make sure we can stay ahead in recording. So no episode next week. Do not fret, though, because the week after that, you're going to get us talking for what I assume will be a long, long discussion of Alien Covenant. So if
I wonder how long I can scream.
If you enjoyed the Prometheus review, don't worry, baby. We're back for more. So that's coming next time. Not next week, but the week after. So hopefully you look forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, now that I've just told them all that, what's the bet in like Netflix or someone put out a sci-fi movie like really short notice?
I'm going to go ahead and put all my money on that. That seems like a safe bet.
Yes. Also, check out Collector's Cut. 90s Disaster season is just about to wrap up. Or technically it has wrapped up because the last movie's Twisters, which is not a 90s Disaster movie. It's just connected to the 90s Disaster movies. But that's next week on Collector's Cut. But yeah, as I said at the start, you can get bonus content if you want to help support the show and all the different shows we do, whether it be Ace, Screams After Midnight, Collector's Cut, the TV reviews I do over MailFuzz TV. You can support all of that over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. And the 2 bonus shows you get from me and David are Criterion Cut, where we review Criterion Collection movies, and Extra Reels, where we review some of the worst things that have ever been made. So if those sound like fun extra shows for various reasons, then you can go and get them for helping support the content. And I wouldn't be able to do all this as much as I do if it wasn't for Patreon and YouTube memberships and so on. Why did you just wink at them, David?
I've been doing that all the time. You just never noticed.
I don't know what the implication is of the wink. You're making it feel like it's a used car salesman pitch here. It's meant to be kind of a genuine moment.
It absolutely is. It's 100% genuine. I would never undershoot. No, that's not the word. Undermine. That's it.
Undermines the
never undermine you.
All right.
Great
okay.
Magnificent Pete.
That's the plugging done. I'm curious. Yes. I assume you picked a time travel movie based on
what?
Based on wanting to link it to this, but what was your homework movie, David?
How dare you assume I am so basic? I decided to instead go with a movie that had a very large Japanese presence in it, and that is The Final Countdown.
Basic trash.
Yeah, all right, so for those who don't know, it is another time travel movie, obviously.
This is a very early episode as well. This is like episode 8 or something like that.
Yep, episode 8. So the general premise is there's a big old Navy ship, and then they go through a weird storm, and then wouldn't you know it's World War II. Here's the thing. I like the way that Final Countdown sets up the discovery of it. I like the way that it's a slow burn to finally discover like what's going on. But by the end of the movie, the only thing I got out of it is, God, do I want to join the Navy? Because this entire movie is just one massive commercial for the Navy.
It's a lot of like plane and boat porn. It really is. They and it's all real stuff, and that's why it feels like a commercial, because it's all just real footage of planes taking off and whatnot.
There's a point at the end when the ship decides, okay, we're gonna go do this thing, and they do a long launching sequence. They show all the jets going off, and then something else happens. They're like, okay, never mind, call it back, and then they don't end up doing any sort of fight. So it just felt like the only purpose for 5 straight minutes was just to show the planes taking off. And it's just infuriating by the time you hit the end of the movie, because it just feels lame.
I think the concept of the movie and the potential like debate of what to do is fantastic. It's great science fiction in terms of ideas. It just never really has that, like, never really does those discussions, not properly, not the way that I wanted them to have them.
That's the thing. They start the discussions numerous times, and then his character shuts it down by just saying like, well, we gotta make a decision, so we're gonna do this. And it's like, no, discuss, debate, figure out what's the right thing to do. That's what I want you to do. Stop shutting it down. But nope, more planes gotta be shown. So overall, I mean, it's not an awfully made movie. It's got Martin Sheen, it's got Kirk Douglas, it's got decent cast there. I didn't dislike anything.
Catherine Ross in that as well, I want to say.
I think so.
I think that's the woman that's in it,
Yeah, I think so. But regardless, it's a fine enough cast. It is just the problem of when I get a time travel movie, I want the writers to do something super unique with it. I want them to come up with this new thing that plays with the idea. And this one is, like I said earlier, one of the lazier ones. It's one of these ideas where they're back in time, but then they don't really play with the concept that much. So overall, I think I probably would end up giving it I give it like a 6, honestly. It didn't accomplish what I wanted it to accomplish based off what it set up.
Still above halfway though, so I assume you didn't hate your time with it.
No, it's just, honestly, I gave it my attention, but if I ever put it on again, it would be perfect second screen content for me, because it's just the sort of thing where I could look up at any point and I get the gist of it of they're launching more planes. Great.
Just a few years before Top Gun, which is obviously a much bigger hit with the plane porn. So
yes.
Oh well, and hell, probably I assume a few years before the song "The Final Countdown." Otherwise, they would never have called their movie "The Final Countdown."
Yeah, I didn't really understand why it was called The Final Countdown to begin with. There was nothing in here that was like any sort of deadline or anything like that they had to meet. It was just kind of, Pearl Harbor's going to happen.
Oh well, there you go.
Yeah.
All right, well that's an early episode you've crossed off.
Yeah.
David will return with more homework next time, where he looks at another movie from the past. Although, given that the next movie is an Alien movie, I'm going to take a wild guess and say that you're probably going to do an Alien and/or Predator.
I think that is not something that should be allowed to be bet on, because it seems like too safe of a bet.
All right, that's the show, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully you've received a good recommendation out of this episode. This is kind of an interesting one where it's not a movie you've probably heard of, so hopefully we encourage you to go and see it yourself.
Culture.
Bit of culture in your life, absolutely. So thank you very much for joining us. We always appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer ad salsa.